Hi, Tymen. Hi, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, I can. Wait a
Okay.
minute. Yes, okay.
So let me open
Hello.
your paper here and share that with you, and we can talk about my comments. Now, I haven't looked at it since I sent it to you, so let's. Okay, so all right, so here's the paper, and so we'll save it again just in case I have to make some changes. And okay, so like that. Okay, so all right, so it says here. Yeah, so I mean, one of my purposes here is to engage in dialogue with you, to increase discussion and commentary. So I think one of the main issues I want to make sure it's clear that you got to use and cite information from three different chapters, from chapters 1 through.
Yeah, I did that, but I have 3 citations in it, but you said that, well, I have 2 very clear ones, and at the top, I just say what they're saying in brief words.
Oh, okay. So you sent me at page 1. That's from chapter 1.
Yes. Then
That's from chapter 1 too, isn't it?
that's from chapter 5.
It says page 13.
Yeah, but from chapter 5 in the book, it says that.
Oh, okay. What page is it then? I think I missed that. Okay, so you might want to fix that.
Okay, but I don't know what is actually the right way to cite, because I'm doing the citations like that the entire time, but I never know if it's the right way or
Well,
whatever.
I mean, like for example, you can put the right page number. If it's chapter 5, it's not page 13, right? So I mean,
Okay.
of course, you can find that the notes that I've been posting. I indicate where all the information is on each page. So I guess that's where I was kind of.
Yeah, I'm actually always in the notes citing, but I think that's also the
Well, I
wrong
mean, like I
thing.
said, if you look at chapter 5 of the
Yeah.
notes, if you go to
Okay.
the U.S. Foreign Policy class, chapter 5. I mean, you can see
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Yeah. So I have to just change that up a little bit in
Well,
the
sure. I mean, you want to make it easy. The idea is that if the reader wants to check this, to verify, the information is there, you can do that. So here, there's chapter 5. So I indicate like this is all on page
Oh
9,
yeah.
and then where my comments are, and then so and I show you where each, this the end. This is on page 94, and so on. Okay, so just to make
Yeah.
sure.
Perfect.
Okay, so let me go back into the paper and try to open that up. So let me place that, and me place that.
Well, the end paper will also is also around the 450, 500 words yet, right? Because
Yeah.
I think I'll have to maybe cut back on one topic to like give a more broad sense on the other things I'm talking about, because I had the feeling that I didn't have enough, I didn't have enough words to like fully explain everything and go detailed into everything.
Well, I mean, 550 words, not including the footnotes and the references and everything. But like I said, I mean, it's desirable to have a word limit, because you have to know exactly what you want to say and argue in order to get within that word limit. So, if you're going to argue, for example, that Donald Trump is the consequence is a political phenomenon that is a consequence of the effects of globalization from containment. Right, the Americans set up this world system after World War II in terms of trade, in terms of security, because of the prevailing belief that not the only, but the predominant motivation was to contain the Soviet Union. That the Soviet Union was a Russian version of Nazi Germany, and so we had to have strong, supportive allies and who are strong and stable against the aggressive, subversive machinations of world communism directly from Moscow. And that in a world particularly in which the much of the so-called third world, the post-colonial countries in Africa and Asia, they might find communism to be attractive, because the Soviet Union is telling everybody, look what we accomplished. When World War I was over, we were defeated, and then we had the Russian Civil War. Millions died. By 1920, the Russian economy was devastated. 12% of its economic output of 1914. We were still a backward country, predominantly, overwhelmingly rural, predominantly. And then under communism, we industrialized. we
Now the
modernized,
Korea,
and then
yeah.
we were invaded by the Germans, and we defeated the Germans, even though we were terribly hurt by the war, millions dead, and then we recovered in 5 years, and then we became a superpower, and then we put the first satellite into space. And this might be really attractive to a lot of post-colonial states in Africa and Asia that want to industrialize and develop as rapidly as possible. And their experience with capitalism was not very nice, whether it be, the Belgians in the Congo or the French in Vietnam or and so they might well find this to be attractive. And that was the American concern. So the Americans often supported unpleasant people like Mobutu Sese Seko in Zaire, because they believed that Patrice Lumumba basically was an African version of Fidel Castro. That was the word circulating in the CIA, that Patrice Lumumba is an African Castro. And so the Americans, but that included this notion that not so much Africa and Latin America, but these other countries like Europe and Asia, they needed to develop in order to restart their economies and become stable allies on the front lines with the Soviet Union, because they have borders with the Soviet Union. And so the Americans, leadership convinced the American people that this was the case, that the Soviet Union was evil. And that's why they acquiesced to the war in Korea, although they were not really, happy about it. You could make the argument that Truman didn't run for re-election in 1952 because he could have run for re-election. Legally, he was still permitted to run, and he didn't do it because the Korean War, and he knew he was going to lose. And then they fought the Vietnam War, and that quickly became unpopular when it became the fundamental assumptions that somehow the Americans should be able to defeat the communists in Vietnam because the communists were some kind of mercenary, ideological subversives exported from Moscow, pretty much was shown to be wrong. But the Americans couldn't understand why they were, and then they didn't matter. It became that became less important. That basically the Americans wanted to win because they already lost thousands of American soldiers, American dead, and they, regardless of why they got there, they didn't want to admit they made a mistake that killed all these people. So you just win.
Like poker,
if you win, you don't have to ask why we won. We just won.
It's little. I would say it's a little bit like poker because they already lost so many, so they wanted to win at the end. So they continued betting, and then that's how they lost big.
I think of course, still when you look, for example, like we compare in class, and this is something to think about, and maybe I should think more about it, like how the Americans left at Vietnam versus how they left Afghanistan, right? Richard Nixon emerges as a really strong Cold Warrior throughout the 1950s, and then he loses to Kennedy. Kennedy is president. Kennedy gets killed. Johnson comes in and makes the commitment to fight in Vietnam. And then that turns out to be a disaster. Nixon exploits that to come in and win in 1968, but barely defeating his opponent, Hubert Humphrey. And he says he's got a secret plan to get us out of Vietnam without losing the war. And he talked about, you can find the speech on YouTube, peace with honor. I will deliver peace with honor. Because remember, he said, North Vietnam cannot defeat the United States. Only Americans can do that. In other words, the dissenters, the protesters, the college students, the people protesting against the Vietnam War, they're the source of weakness and decadence. And so his secret plan basically involves circumventing the bureaucracy to open up relations with China, communist China. And in order to exploit what was called the Sino-Soviet split, to increase relations with China, to pressure Moscow, to in turn pressure Hanoi, North Vietnam, to negotiate with the Americans so the Americans can look like they were not defeated in Vietnam. So Americans, they reach an agreement, so the Americans leave militarily by 1973, but South Vietnam doesn't collapse for another 18 months. And then, of course, in the meantime, Nixon gets reelected by a landslide in 1972, but then he resigns in 1974, and then Vietnam collapses in 75, and Cambodia and Laos as well. And then and so Gerald Ford is the president And then he loses election to Jimmy Carter. Now, how much did Ford pay a price for the collapse of Vietnam? I don't really know. Typically, the common refrain, and I should investigate this, is that Ford lost because he pardoned Nixon. After Nixon resigned, he said that Nixon would not be tried. He's pardoned for any crimes he may have committed. Maybe that's why I should look into it, but Carter wins. But then after Carter wins, there's again this upsurge of American nationalism that Nixon exploited is still there. And then there's a number of setbacks in the United States, influence in the world. The Shah of Iran, the American client that the CIA put in power in 1953, comes under challenge. Carter appears to be vulnerable to the charge that he didn't do enough to help him stay in power, and he's overthrown. And these protesters saying "Death to America, death to America," because the Shah was a CIA agent, and they all knew it.
Yeah. And that's also something that I'm like that I also want to talk about. I think I did it briefly, but it was I talked about the fact about well, I don't know if I actually put it or if it was another paragraph, but that actually the US keeps on like they are making these people big that at the end they'll screw them over. Like we have a few Afghan people, a few other people. I think Cuba also, America also made some people big there, but then at the end they screwed them over, and as well as you just talked about the other cases. And I want to like put that in my paper with it because Americans were fed up with it and fed up with the normal political system, that they wanted a change of system, and that's why they went for Trump at the end.
Well, where they're fed up with, I mean, they're being led by, because as I think you might note in your paper that most Americans don't pay close attention to the details of foreign policy, but they still are proudly Americans. So they don't like losing, and they're being persuaded by competing political factions who are trying to win elections that the government is responsible for us being embarrassed or us being looking ridiculous or failing in Kabul or whatever. And then you have the government, of course, defending itself. But you have these graphic images, which for many Americans, even if they are unhappy about the post-Cold War system that the Americans set up to try to appeal to the world, including allowing increased immigration in the United States, fighting racism, promoting diversity, ending segregation of minorities, racial groups, increasing immigration, still, that might be appealing to the elite public and people like you who really benefit from globalization. I mean, you're from Belgium, right? So you speak English,
Yes.
And you speak. Yes. Are you Flems or Walloon?
Yeah, I speak Dutch, English, French, German.
Wow. I mean, the world for you is your oyster. I mean, you are going to benefit from globalization so much because you have multiple linguistic skills. You have a college degree. But Europe has always been better prepared to deal with the consequences of globalization because they've always been more aware.
Because we're all different countries, and you have the States, which is a little bit, you can like compare it a little bit, but you all speak English, and it's all very American minded in your sense. And we have these different countries that all are also doing like the different laws and whatever, but we have a lot of, like in Belgium alone, we have 3 official languages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what it brings, but that's also what it brought because of World War II, or just because of the wars that have been there in Belgium, for example, because, well, the north is Dutch. That's because the people from Holland invaded Belgium. Well, they had the north sides. The south, they speak French. Why? Because we were a part of France for a little bit. And then also after World War II, we got a part back from Germany after the negotiations. So that's the German side. So we're actually, Belgium is a little bit of a mix of all of other countries, I would say. Yeah.
And, but like you pointed out, Americans, their experience with other minorities was in the context of racist imperial colonialism. So whether it be bringing Africans in from Africa as enslaved people, or Indians as targets of exploitation of their resources and removal, or even Hispanics during the, this is in the Mexican-American War, when the United States was expanding west. But this diversity of modern diversity, that's something that really took off during the Cold War, when America, for example, changed its immigration policies, partly in the context of this competition for global soft power influence. When the Soviet Union is saying, "Oh, look, America's such a racist country. Look how they treat their African Americans. Look how they treat their Indians. Look at and of course, and the Americans responded to that with this increasing commitment to soft power appeals that leads to more integration and obvious awareness of integration of America into global society, which the Americans' traditional viewpoint is that somehow America is separate from the rest of the world. I'm not saying for everybody. I'm saying that your typical American, your typical American doesn't speak 2 languages or 3 languages, not to mention 4 languages like you. We still don't even require that all American students have to study a foreign language. It's not done. That pretty much just establishes it, right? In Europe, everybody's got to study a foreign language, like in Korea, but not in the United States. And so you got all of these, but it's still the American economy is integrated with the world economy, partly as a result of this Cold War commitment to integrating the world to stand up to the Soviet Union.
Would you then say that the US has a little bit an anti-globalization approach?
Yeah, because
or is it more that they think that English is the way to go and everyone should be able to speak English?
Well, to the extent to which they think about that, that tends to be the standard view of the Americans who are involved. Like, for example, my language skills, I speak Bulgarian, but I don't speak Bulgarian anywhere near as how well you speak English. I couldn't make I couldn't start teaching in Korean tomorrow.
But I have to say, not everyone, but I was raised in different countries, so that's why my English is that good, because I went to international schools during my youth.
Yeah. But but that's one of the. I'm not saying Europe is totally. Obviously, we know that they're not immune to this right populist nationalism. You have the rise of anti-immigration policies. What is it in Belgium? The Vlaams Belang,
yeah. It's actually it's in entire Europe. It's becoming so popular because of the things that are going down in Arabia, that everyone, in the Arabic countries, that everyone is coming to the north to Europe, which is like the American dream, but then at our side of the world.
Yeah, so like the Europeans have been prepared for European integration. There's tensions there. One of the Brexit motivations was the large number of East Europeans coming into Britain after the East Europe joined the European Union. But typically the rise of these far-right parties have really been boosted by non-European immigration from Middle Eastern and African countries. And that has really, but the Europeans need to be very prepared to deal with that so far. They obviously weren't able to deal with the British, but the British case is a different case because of Britain's.
Everyone wants to go to Britain because you don't need a legal passport to work there. So that's the main reason why everyone was always camping out. So in Belgium, close to the border, to actually jump on trucks or whatever to get into Britain, because you don't need a passport or whatever to have or a green card to work there.
Yeah. So. And then of course the British, they're more like the Americans insofar as, for example, that they don't think that their fate is somehow, they don't, many, I'm not saying Britons feel this, many Britons do not feel or understand and have sentiment in their belief that somehow that their fate is intimately connected to what happens in Europe, because they have this Anglo-Saxon British worldview based upon their previous period as under the British Empire, that they it's very much part of British understandings of how they respond to the international environment, right? In effect, functionally, in terms of how they respond to the world, they think about the world from a British-centric point of view because of their British history. Whereas, so what does it mean in terms of what's going to happen? Still, is Biden going to be? Is he going to pay a price politically for what happened with the collapse of the American client regime in Afghanistan?
That's also the thing, with Trump, who actually made the stepping stones on that. the question is who will be responsible at the end. And indeed, I think that Biden will, because he eventually, he put the plug out. He was the one who said, "Okay, let's get them out now." And I think that's also something I think Americans don't know, because they don't to pay that much attention to the foreign policy, that they just see, oh, Biden did this. Instead of
there's,
all
I mean,
the
you know,
rounds
look,
of review.
these elections are, you know, at least for president, they're decided by 10% of the vote. The 10% of, no more than 10% of American people will shift their vote. Republicans generally vote for Republicans. Democrats are will vote for Democrats. It's that 10% of swing voters that might be persuaded either way to change their vote. So those people that hate Biden are going to hate Biden. They're not. It doesn't. You know, and they'll. You ask them why, they'll say, Afghanistan. That's why I hate Biden. They're not going to. You know, even if it is due to the fact that they think that the Democratic Party is beholden to non-white, non-male factions, they won't come out. They often will not come out and say that, because that's not acceptable rhetoric in polite circles. So
also where you grew up in the society.
People still have to give you reason. That's why the public opinion polls are a problem, right? But we do know they are important. They were studying because politicians pay attention to them, because they're thinking about what, you know, how am I supposed to do my job? You know, I'm supposed to respond to the will of the American people. Well, how do you know what the will of the American people is? Public opinion surveys, that might be one way. Newspaper reports, editorials. What is this thing called the will of the American people? They say, well, what it is the outcome of elections. That's it. What else can it be? And so, and of course, I, as a leader, as a politician, I try to influence the outcome of those elections. And that's democracy. And so, you know, is Biden going to be able to persuade, like what the public opinion polls, according to news reports, said that for the first time since Biden came into office, his public opinion survey ratings, public opinion approval ratings dropped below 50% for the first time in the days after the Kabul collapse. Now, is that because of the Kabul collapse? Well, it looks often a lot like, yeah, that's part of it. Is that all of it? Most of it? And the reason we care is because what can he do and what will he do in the 13 months until the next congressional elections in November next year? And understanding that different groups of constituencies in America have different interests. Nationalism doesn't explain everything, but it is powerful for a number of people. It's not their only motivation and their only incentive for evaluating politicians. Biden's going to emphasize the economic interests, right? He's trying to get it in now policies through the Congress that will appeal to the economic interests of many people. But still,
then actually attend to like more look after the 10% swing voters, or are they like still for their beliefs? Like, because if you're having the upcoming elections and you say, well, you have Democrats and the Republicans, right? So these will definitely stem for Democratic.
You know, that's a good point.
President party. Do they then really tend to like the 10%, or is it not at all that way? They still try to tend a lot to the Democrats, because what if they lose that part of the votes?
You know, that's a good point. I think you raise a good point. It is partly that, but it's also trying to get the people that are pro-democratic, get them excited about voting, because that's the problem. Because typically, people, you know, it's a matter of people getting your activist base, the activists active. So if they're not excited about Biden, they're not going to get on the phone and call people. They're not going to campaign for him. They're not going to help, and they're not going to donate money to political candidates, because they think, oh, Biden, he's not doing anything interesting. So it's not just the 10%. It's trying to get the activists, the excited about him.
Yeah, you're right, because I forgot about that. Like, because you have a vote right?
But at the same time, there's that 10% that there's some of those people in that 10% swing vote who don't like activists, right? Who might respond negatively to, for example, stringent restrictions on oil and gas development. I mean, they don't want to.
It's a very diverse group, yeah. The swing voters.
I'm not saying it's an easy task, right? But the closest thing we have to trying to estimate all of these dynamic shifting sentiments that change day or week by week, and is public opinion surveys. And they give you a snapshot in time, but it's only one snapshot in a particular point of time. But presidents pay close attention to those, because what else are you going to use? You know, you can use your gut, you can use your instincts, you can try to think, I know my people, and I know maybe, but so Biden is in an alert mode, because of course his competitors are claiming that he's another Jimmy Carter, that he's a fool, he's incompetent. Look what happened in Afghanistan, and we need a 2022-24 version of Ronald Reagan to come and make America great again, and that might be Donald Trump. I mean, or if not him, somebody else. So that, in terms of America being overextended, Biden's already vulnerable to political attacks, to being incompetent. So he's not going to, for example, cut back aid to Israel. He's not going to, accommodate Chinese demands regarding Taiwan, because he's already being attacked by his opponents as being ineffective.
Yeah, but that's then the problem, right? Because then you're worrying too much about the fact that you're losing public votes and public opinion about you, but you're not trying to do the right thing for your country anymore, no?
Well, I mean, like with Donald Trump, what did Donald Trump think was going to happen? That he was going to get reelected, and then before the pandemic started, they made that deal in February last year with the Taliban to withdraw by May of this year. The pandemic happened. What would have happened if if the pandemic hadn't happened and Donald Trump got reelected? Would he have followed through and left Afghanistan?
Was it finished with South Korea as well? That's also the question.
Yeah.
What would have been the status of South Korea and the US now as well?
Yeah, and maybe maybe you're right. Maybe if you want to give Donald Trump some of the benefit of the doubt, withdrawing is difficult, because it's so. But unless you're Donald Trump saying, I'm radically changing everything, I'm out of Afghanistan, I'm out of Korea, we're out, and Americans go, yeah, we're out. Okay, but then you have this vast foreign policy establishment bureaucracy fighting this, and the pandemic saved them. You can make the argument, because
would you then say that the bureaucracy is more Democrats or pro-globalization?
It depends. I mean, the military people tend to be more Republican, and that's a big part of the establishment.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And they don't want to leave South Korea. They don't want to leave Japan. They don't want to leave, Afghanistan, and they did, and they still had to leave.
Yeah, even here, I've already met like a lot of American people who are here from the army who are working here in a base.
Yeah. So, I mean, you raise all these interesting questions that I got to think about, because, in terms of what Donald Trump phenomenon represented, in terms of how a country, because like I said, typically countries don't decline gracefully. It's usually ugly.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't be violent, but it's typically, withdrawing from your commitments is difficult. And Trump, if he runs for re-election, he'll get the nomination. I just don't know if he's going to win, but the foreign policy establishment is against him.
And then the question is, who will win if it's Trump versus Biden again? Because if Biden has public attention has like dropped that much,
yeah,
that then a big question.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to stop there, because I have another suit coming in. So I didn't think I made any more changes there. I just wanted to highlight that there, that fix that page number. So I'll send you this again, just to remind you that.
Yes, thank you.
And
again, is it like a direct citation? Because in the beginning I just put like the little things they talked about this, or do I really have to have like a direct citation?
Give me the page number where it's located. I mean, just correcting the page number. Okay. So here it is. Okay. And just make sure I send to you like this, go like here, go here.
Did you know you saw me last week when I said hello to you?
Yeah.
Did you not know that was me?
I mean, behind the masks is kind of difficult.
Yes, it's always a
Okay. See you.
Yes.